Hi guys, it's me. It's Miss Checka. Not on the road or doing anything crazy, just here. I'm excited for us to be reading some more of Esperanza Rising. But I also got to tell you, today was my first day of the brand new school year. So, you know that teachers usually go back to work like a week before the kids. So today was the first day of like all the meetings with the teachers. I was a little nervous because this year everything is online. And then next week I start teaching and I have all the classes all day, which also makes me nervous. So number one, I do want to hear how your online school has been so far. And if you have any advice for me. And number two, we need to figure out a different time for Nerd Hangout. So, like for instance, tomorrow I have a meeting right at 1:00, which is when we usually have our Nerd Hangout. So I might record a video to do tomorrow for one. The day after that, on Wednesday, I can be here live. But between now and Wednesday, we need to figure out a different time that works for everybody, a different plan. So we'll see. So anyway, I don't know who's out there right now. But I'm excited to share this book with you. And if you want to put anything in the chat box about how your school has been going, if you have advice for me, I am here for it. Okay. Well, another thing that I would be interested for anybody to put on the chat box is last week when we read in Esperanza Rising, she had to do laundry. And remember, she was like a little bit embarrassed because she didn't really know how to do it. And it was all by hand. So I would be interested to know in the chat box if anybody took me up on my challenge and then A, said thank you to the person in their house that does the laundry, and B, if anybody actually did the laundry or tried the laundry. I see Tess there. Hello, Tess. So yeah, I would love to see that in the chat box. Did you find out who in your house does the laundry? Did you say thank you to them? Did you try it yourself? Okay. So we are in Esperanza Rising on page 116. So I'm going to start reading, but if you want to type anything, you type and I will be checking. Isabel sat with the babies while Esperanza went out to sweep the platform. The camp was quiet, and even though it was late in the day, the sun was unrelenting. She retrieved the broom and stepped onto the wooden floor. Dried and brittle onion skins were everywhere. In her entire life, Esperanza had never held a broom in her hand. But she had seen Hortensia sweep and she tried to visualize the memory. It couldn't possibly be that hard. She put both hands near the middle of the broomstick and moved it back and forth. It swung wildly. The motion seemed awkward and the fine dirt on the wooden planks lifted into a cloud. Onion jackets flew into the air instead of gathering together in a neat pile like Hortensia's. Esperanza's elbows did not know what to do. Neither did her arms. She felt streams of perspiration sliding down her neck. She stopped for a moment and stared at the broom as if willing it to behave. Determined, she tried again. She hadn't noticed that several trucks were already unloading workers nearby. Then she heard it. First, a small tittering, and then louder. She turned around. A group of women were laughing at her, and in the middle of the group was Marta, pointing. La Cenicienta, Cinderella, she laughed, burning with humiliation. Esperanza dropped the broom and ran back into the cabin. In her room, she sat on the edge of the cot. Her face flushed again at the thought of the ridicule. She was sitting there staring at the wall when Isabel found her. I'm going to pause for a little second. So first of all, I see that Tess did do the laundry with a bit of help. Excellent. I'm very proud of you. Did not say thank you. It's okay, because you still have the opportunity to say thank you every single time laundry gets done at your house. Like you could say it today. Especially now you know kind of what goes into it. I love that you did that. Let's talk about this broom thing a little bit, because if I had read this part of the story 1 year ago, I would have said, this is totally made up. That is not possible. Everybody knows how to sweep a floor. And even if you had never swept a floor before, if somebody hands you a broom, you just know how to do it. It's not that hard. However, last year at my school, we have a great big, huge oak tree outside of my classroom, which is nice because it gives us kind of some nice shade. But in the fall, all of these leaves come down, and thousands and thousands and thousands of these little acorns come down. And for a couple of weeks there, it's dangerous to walk around because it's like a cartoon, you know, like in the cartoons when they drop like a jar of marbles and the marbles go everywhere and then everybody slips and falls on them. Okay, it's like that, except instead of being marbles, they're acorns. And so I told some of my students, I said, you know what? We cannot be walking and slipping and like falling around all of these acorns on our cement sidewalk. I want us to go and sweep them up. So I have this group of boys, and then I hand one a broom and I hand another broom. And then I left. I went to go do other things because, you know, they're just going to sweep it. And I come back, and you know what? They had not done it. They had not done it. And I said, but how could you have spent all this time and you have not swept up these acorns? I said, show me how you're sweeping. And then they showed me, and I realized, like, you know what? I asked you to do something, but I didn't even show you how to do it. Because it turns out they did not know how to sweep, because that is not a job that they did in their house. So Esperanza, it's not just that that's not a job that she does in her house. She doesn't do any jobs in her house because she has servants. And so now the very first time that she's sweeping and she's outside, she's got something even worse than cranky Miss Cheka, who was like, why haven't you finished this? Show me what you're doing. That's what I sound like. She has somebody who is not just annoyed with her. She has these ladies laughing at her. And it's really hard to try something new when you've got people staring at you, laughing at you, right? So kind of my takeaway from that is, number one, don't do that to other people. That's not nice. Right? So even if it seems like it's something obvious to you, it's maybe not obvious to somebody else. So don't be the person who's like, ha, 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 I can't believe you don't know how to do that, because it stinks to be on the other side. And then number two, if somebody does that to you, I totally get it if you feel like Esperanza, right? What does Esperanza do? Right away, she quits, she goes inside, and then she just sits there. I understand that. But you quit, you go inside, you're never going to learn how to do the thing. So for me, if somebody makes fun of me that I'm learning how to do something, I always say, like, number one, do you want to do it yourself? Here's the broom, right? That's one option. And the other one is like, I am just going to like stop my ears up to anybody who is going to tease me while I'm learning this, because I really want to learn how to do the thing. So I can also say, like, hey, why don't you show me how to do it or help me do it, instead of pointing and laughing. But it's a hard situation. I feel sympathetic to her. Let's see how she handles it. And I think in this case, it kind of makes it worse. Those aren't people she knows, right? I said I could work. This is Esperanza talking. I told Mama I could help, but I cannot even wash clothes or sweep a floor. Does the whole camp know? Isabel sat down on the bed next to her and patted her back. Yes. Esperanza groaned. Oh, I'll never be able to show my face. She put her head in her hands until she heard someone else come into the room. Esperanza looked up to see Miguel holding a broom and a dustpan. He wasn't laughing. She looked down and bit her lips so she wouldn't cry in front of him. He shut the door, then stood in front of her and said, how would you know how to sweep a floor? The only thing you ever learned was how to give orders. It was not your fault. Ansa, look at me. She looked up. Pay attention, he said, his face serious. You hold the broom like this. One hand here and the other here. Esperanza watched. Then you push like this, or pull it toward you like this. Here, you try, he said, holding out the broom. Slowly, Esperanza got up and took the broom from him. He positioned her hands on the handle. She tried to copy him, but her movements were too big. Smaller strokes, said Miguel, coaching, and sweep all in one direction. She did as he said. That's exactly what my kids were doing that was driving me crazy, is when you go like this, you're just moving the acorns around. You got to go in one direction. Miguel's a good friend. Now, when you get all the dirt into a pile, you hold the broom down here near the bottom and push the dirt into the pan. Esperanza collected the dirt. See, you can do it. Miguel raised his thick eyebrows and smiled. Someday, you might make a very good servant. Isabel giggled. Esperanza could not find humor in the situation. Somberly, she said, Thank you, Miguel. He grinned and bowed. At your service, mi reina, which means my queen. Somberly, but this time his voice was kind. So I guess that's maybe like challenge number 2. If you've done some laundry, try and sweep a floor today, maybe like your kitchen floor. See if you can do it. She remembered that he had gone to look for work at the railroad. Did you get a job? His smile faded. He put his hands in his pocket and shrugged his shoulders. It is frustrating. I can fix any engine, but they will only hire Mexicans to lay track and dig ditches, not as mechanics. I've decided to work in the fields until I can convince someone to give me a chance. Esperanza nodded. After he left the room, Isabel said, He calls you mi reina. Will you tell me about your life as a queen? Esperanza sat on the mattress and patted the spot next to her. Isabel sat down. Isabel, I will tell you all about how I used to live, about parties and private school and beautiful dresses. I will even show you the beautiful doll my papa brought me. If you will teach me how to pin diapers, how to wash, and Isabel interrupted her. But that is so easy. Esperanza stood up and carefully practiced with the broom. It is not easy for me. So I think that's wonderful, right? So the two are going to become friends and they're going to kind of exchange information and stuff. But why doesn't Miguel? So first of all, we can kind of guess why Miguel wants to work on the railroad, right? Because we know he really likes trains. Remember that when he helped Esperanza and her mom and her papa wanted to reward him, the prize that Miguel wanted was that he wanted to take a train trip, right? When he was a little boy, and that was such a magical experience for him. So we know that he likes trains, that he's liked trains since he was little. So we can understand why he wants to work for the railroad. And then, does he have any skills? Yes, he does. He just finished saying, I can work on any engine. I can take apart any engine. So he has a lot of mechanical skills from the work that he did for Esperanza's papa. So then the question is, if he has the skills and we know that he has the desire to do it, why won't they give him a job? Tess has a different kind of broom. I wonder if it's like a Swiffer. Those are fun. I'm kind of interested. Tess, you should have your mom send me a picture so I can know what kind of broom this is. But going back to the railroad for a second, why doesn't he get the job? Let's read this sentence. They will only hire Mexicans to lay track and dig ditches, not as mechanics. So that is what is called discrimination, right? is you have a job, you want to hire somebody for the job, and instead of saying, oh, this person would, has the skills that we need, they would be able to do it. This person would be a good worker because we know they're enthusiastic about it. And hiring people because of reasons like that. Maybe this person has experience or whatever. Instead, that's what discrimination is they're saying like, oh, this group of people, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of skill or you have a lot of desire to, or whatever, we're not going to hire you because of, right? So that could be because of your gender, like if you're a woman, because in this case, because of ethnicity. But in the history of the US, we have had discrimination in jobs because of a laundry list of reasons. And so now in the United States, any place that hires people has to post up a list of rules so that every worker knows they cannot be discriminated against. So like in schools, it's usually up in the teacher's lounge. But if you pay attention, like companies have to post because this is the 1930s. And since the 1930s, we have had a lot of laws passed and protections that say, you can't just say, I'm not going to hire women. You can't do that. You can't say, I'm not going to hire somebody who's Black for this position. You can't do that. So 1930, they don't have those protections in place for Miguel, and they can discriminate against him. And they did with a lot of people. So one, that's real history. Stuff like that really happened. Two, that's very recent history, right? So we're reading about this happening to Miguel many years ago, 1930s, right? So it's like 90 years ago. But if you were, for instance, LGBT, like if you're gay in the United States, up until very, very, very recently, they could discriminate against you because of that. They could say like, hey, you must, even if you are like the best, whatever in the entire universe, we will not hire you because of who you are. So it's a true history in the United States, and it's a recent history in the United States. So this is why it is important to push back against things that we know are wrong, right? Okay, so I just feel for Miguel because I know he really, really likes trains. All right, let's read a little bit more. So on page 121, las almendras, the almonds. Ay, my neck hurts, said my mom as she massaged the back of her head with her hand. It is not my neck. It is my arms that are sore, said Hortensia. It's the same for everyone, said Josefina. When you first start in the sheds, the body refuses to bend, but in time, you will get used to the work. Everyone had come home that night, tired and with various aches and pains. They gathered in one cabin for dinner, so it was crowded and noisy. Josefina warmed a pot of beans, and Hortensia made fresh tortillas. Juan and Alfonso talked about the fields while Miguel and Isabel played with the babies, making them squeal with laughter. Mama cooked arroz, that means rice, and Esperanza was surprised that Mama knew just how to brown it first in oil with onions and peppers. Esperanza chopped tomates, as tomatoes, for a salad and hoped no one would mention the sweeping. She was glad this day was over. Her bruises had been to her pride. Isabel took a fresh tortilla, sprinkled it with salt, and rolled it up like a cigar and waved it at Miguel. How come you and Tio Alfonso won't let me get behind the cabin with you? Shh, he said. It's a surprise. Why are you always so full of secrets? Asked Esperanza. But neither Alfonso nor Miguel answered. They simply smiled as they prepared their plates. They ate dinner, but before they could slice a cantaloupe for dessert, Alfonso and Miguel disappeared with instructions not to follow them. What are they doing? Demanded Isabel. Hortensia shrugged as if she knew nothing. Miguel came back just before sunset. Señora and Esperanza, we have something to show you. Esperanza looked at Mama. It was obvious Mama was as confused as she was. They all followed Miguel to where Alfonso was waiting. Behind the cabin was an old oval wash tub with one end cut off. It had been set on its side, forming a little shrine around a plastic statue of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Someone had built a grotto of rocks around the base of the tub. Around it, a plot of earth had been fenced in by sticks and rope and planted with thorny stems, each with only a few branches. Isabel gasped. "It's beautiful. Is that our statue?" Josefina nodded. "But the roses come from far away." Esperanza searched Miguel's face, her eyes hopeful. "Papa's?" "Yes, those are your papa's roses," said Miguel, smiling at her. Alfonso had dug circles of earth around each plant, casitas, little houses, that made moats for deep watering, just like he had done in Aguascalientes. But how? Esperanza remembered the rose garden as a blackened graveyard. After the fire, my father and I dug down to the roots. Many were still healthy. We carried the cuttings from Aguascalientes. That's why we had to keep them wet. We think they will grow. In time, we will see how many bloom. Esperanza bent to look at the stems rooted in mulch. They were leafless and stubby, but lovingly planted. She remembered the night before the fire, when she had last seen the roses and had wanted to ask Hortensia to make rose-hip tea, but she never had the chance. Now, if they bloomed, she could drink the memories of the roses that had known Papa. She looked at Miguel, blinking back tears. "Which one is yours?" Miguel pointed to one. "Which one is mine?" He smiled and pointed to the one that was closest to the cabin wall and already had a makeshift trellis propped against it. "So you can climb," he said. Mama walked up and down, carefully touching each cutting. "This is so sweet." She took Alfonso's hand in her own and kissed him on each cheek. Then she went to Miguel and did the same thing. "Muchas gracias," she said. Mama looked at Esperanza. "Didn't I tell you that Papa's heart would find us wherever we go?" Oh, that's so sweet, guys. That's so beautiful. All right. I'm a watering pot. I always cry in books. Okay, well, that's a really good part for us to leave off on because that's so beautiful. It's a sign of hopefulness, right? That even though their old life was just totally destroyed in the fire and, they've lost the dad, that here it's like a sign of true friendship that they saved the roses and then planting that rose. That's a real sign of hope and a connection with their dad. I think that's really sweet. Anyway, tomorrow will be video, Wednesday back live. Woo! All right. Bye, guys. Eat your fruits and vegetables.